So I'm going to go through explaining the attributes of the layers in After Effects. So in this video here, for instance, let's say I want to kind of scale it down. If you go and click on the triangle here, you would find the transform, and you can see anchor point. Anchor point is the term for the otherwise known as pivot point, is where the center of the layer is, or the component. So if I were to change the coordination of the anchor point, this is what's going to happen. Now in the position, when I change the position, this is going to happen here. It's basically me moving this object around. Same for rotation as well. So if I go to rotation, if needed, I also can change the opacity. So let me delete this and create a text. So along with the text, I'm just going to go through these tools here briefly, or at least I'm just going to cover the things that are useful. 3D text. One thing that I also want to mention is that if you go here, you can find like fit to 100%, so you can do that. So it would fit exactly the composition, it would fit it inside the composition viewing area. This hand here, which I never use, allows you to do this, but I'm always on the selection tool, and if I want to pan with the hand, I can use the middle mouse button, or I can click and hold space bar and it would do the job. Next, the zooming in, that I don't use. I always use the either the see here, either the scrolling, or I could use the this one here, which is sort of like very helpful, especially that sometimes After Effects kind of like either too much or too little, so it's always useful to use this. Camera is really important, especially when you go into the 3D space. So how do I go to the 3D space? If I want to make this text to be viewed in like 3 dimensions, I would click on this cube, and now it has become 3D. But it's really important that I change the camera from the active camera to maybe custom view. Let me just put this to 100% and drag this down. So with the camera, first option, which I like the most, left mouse button is going to allow you to orbit around, middle mouse button is going to allow you to pan the camera, not the canvas. You can see here it's not moving that black background, right? So you can see it is moving basically the camera. And right mouse button is going to zoom in and out. Keep in mind that these features are only available on the unified. Otherwise, these ones would be individually either for orbiting or for track or for zooming in. Okay. Also, this button here is another way of changing the pivot point or the anchor point. So you can see here, you can now change the location of the anchor point. But if you change it from here, that's going to keep the pivot point, the anchor point where it is, and instead it's going to move the text around. Okay. Next we have the shape tool. So the shape is just gonna create shapes. Let me just go into the flat view of things. So let's say I have this 3D text. If I have nothing selected, these shapes are going to be kind of just shapes, and I can change if this like filled with what color. I can also change if it has stroke or not from here. I can also change the color of the stroke. I can increase the thickness of the stroke and whatsoever. So let's go with a star, for instance. So right now I have nothing selected, so that's going to make these shapes just plain shapes. But if I do have a component selected and I go and create a shape, that shape is going to turn to a mask. And the mask has slightly different attributes. So if I go and fold everything here, this is the 3D text, unfold this, and now you can see there is the mask, and in that mask there are attributes such as mask path, which is basically the shape that I have, and then we have the mask feather. And mask opacity as well. And if you want, you can also invert that mask. Okay. I'm going to go and select that mask and delete it so I can stick to that text. And one more thing I want to mention also is how we can create solid or planes, solid layers, or solids they call them. If you go into like layer, new, and then you can find here the solid, the shortcut is Control Y, or if you want also the same thing here. So Control Y is a really good shortcut to remember, because we need to also remember the shortcut for changing the settings of that solid. So let's say I created a red solid and hit enter, and then I decided later that yeah, red doesn't really work, it's really bad with that text, maybe I want it to be blue. So if you double click on it, it's not gonna allow you to change it, and that's gonna be the first habit, like, oh yeah, double click, oh, it's not changing anything. So Control Shift Y instead of Control Y is going to allow me to go and change the color for it.